For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Hello and welcome to Strat News Global. I'm Surya Gangadharan. This evening, we're going to take a look at some of the technology-related announcements made in Nirmala Sitharaman's budget. As you're aware, there are a couple of things that came up there, and I have a small graphic coming up just to give you a sense of what are the little points that we're going to touch upon in the course of this chat. So, the first item on the agenda is the digital rupee, which is clear to be launched. There will be a tax of around 30% on cryptocurrencies. There's a war chest to fund clean technology. There's a renewed focus on digital education, including possibly the use of Doordarshan. The 5G spectrum auction will take place this year, and BharatNet for every village. As you're aware, that will be the backbone, the internet backbone throughout this country. So that's where we are, and these are the issues that are going to come up in the course of this discussion. My guest is Jaijit Bhattacharya. You met him before. He's at the Center for Digital Economy Policy Research. He's the head of it. Jaijit, welcome. Um,
Thank you,
Jaijit,
Sue.
hi. Jaijit, you would have followed the budget closely, especially the tech issues. Now, the digital rupee has been, there's been a buzz about that for some time. Now, the final move is being made.
It is not the final move, frankly, Surya. There are two parts to it. One is the fact that there is a taxation being declared as part of the budget for the existing cryptocurrencies, right? And we had a detailed program with you on this particular issue of the geopolitics of cryptocurrency. So
Yeah.
clearly, there is a huge pushback within the government for going ahead and giving a free pass to cryptocurrency in the form and manner that it exists right now. However, as a very proactive step, what the government has done is ensure that there is no regulatory vacuum to the cryptocurrency, and therefore they've gone ahead and said, yes, we recognize this class of assets which are virtual assets, and therefore, if there is any transaction, we will treat it almost as par with any other assets, such as stock exchanges and money market instruments and so on. And therefore, there will be a taxation on these kind of instruments that are being traded. And that's one part of it. And as you mentioned in the starting, that there will be a 30% tax on the gains that happen as part of the trading on crypto assets. There's also a 1% TDS that will be levied. And on top of it, if you're gifting anyone a crypto asset, there will be taxation in the hands of the recipient. So that it ensures that you don't misuse the crypto assets and you essentially don't do money laundering by passing it off as gifts, and therefore in the hands of the recipients it will get taxed, and those are basically loopholes that are being covered. So that's one aspect of cryptocurrency, which is what to do with what's really going on in the existing market. Now again, as we had discussed in our previous session, that there is a very sharp geopolitical aspect to cryptocurrency, and therefore it is very, very critical and important that the government and that India has its own sovereign digital currency, which is called CBDCs, the central banking digital currency, which is where the press is calling it as a digital rupee being launched. Now, I'm sure there'll be a confusion as to why have a digital rupee when there is already a UPI system. People are already using the UPI system. Why do we need a digital rupee? What the budget is trying to push for, and what RBI is trying to adopt, is the equivalent of a cryptocurrency from a technology perspective, but in the structural manner, it is something that is aligned for the country to use, aligned to the principles of central banking, which ensures that the controls of that currency is with the government, while it has all the pluses of a cryptocurrency, which is easy to use, and you can transfer the money from one person to another without having a central network, and which is very useful for our rural areas where there is still very, very patchy network, and therefore I can pay you using the central bank digital currency, or the digital rupee as it's been called, without having a central connection. Unlike in UPI, where I need to have a central currency connection to be able to make that payment. So that's essentially what the government is pushing for.
So does that mean the cryptocurrency is going to be regulated for now, but it may be banned later? Are they just kicking the can down the road?
I don't think the government has a clear policy laid out in that sense. Everyone is still trying to figure out what needs to be done because clearly, if you ban it at some point in time, it has enough nuisance value in that sense. And the nuisance value is that a lot of people have actually put their money into it. Now, the question is what will happen to cryptocurrencies in the long run on a global platform? Will it exist in the global platform on a long run? As again we had discussed last time on your show, that in the long run, it doesn't look like cryptocurrencies will be allowed to operate if it becomes really successful in that sense, because it will start challenging existing currencies like the US dollar. And if the US government really goes after the cryptos, if it challenges dollar, then we don't think the cryptos will exist. Pretty much the same way that China has banned cryptocurrencies because it started challenging what China wants to do, and therefore China has gone ahead and it's right now piloting a their own cryptocurrency, which will not have competition from any other cryptocurrencies. And therefore, if in the long run the world is going to ban cryptocurrencies, or the major economies are not going to allow cryptocurrencies to operate, then whoever is holding the cryptocurrency at the end of the day will be left with the baby in their hands. So
Yeah.
if I have bought the cryptocurrencies with my own money, it will be worth nothing very, very soon because nobody is going to accept that cryptocurrency. And therefore, it is definitely in the interest of the government to make sure that there is a soft landing and that we move out from the pretty much the wild, wild west cryptocurrency to a regulated cryptocurrency of the government. Now, it might sound very antagonistic to those who are a big cheerleader of cryptocurrency, and saying that it's a new technology. Well, cryptocurrency is not just a new technology, but there is an economic aspect to it. And the economic aspect is that we will end up losing a very, very significant amount of money because larger economies will not allow this currency to operate for the reasons we had discussed earlier. In fact, let me, for the sake of clarity to all those listening to this conversation, go back into why we believe that cryptocurrency will not be allowed to be operated. If you go back to 1971, the US government under President Nixon had stepped up and said that we will not allow dollar to be converted to gold, because till then, under the Bretton Woods agreement, for every $35 you could convert it to 1 ounce of gold. And there was a run on the US dollar because everybody and every country was trying to give their dollars back and say, please send me the gold. And US did not have that kind of gold. So very unilaterally, the US president went and said that, look, this was in Camp David. They said we will not be allowing any further conversion of US dollar to gold, and therefore they cut off any asset, any underlying asset of the US dollar, and therefore the US dollar became, in that sense, the first true cryptocurrency from the perspective that it did not have any underlying asset. But what did the US government do to make sure that people still have faith in the US dollar? Is that they ensured that all energy trade happens with the US dollar. So you could not buy petroleum without having the US dollar, and therefore the term petrodollars. And we have seen, it may be a coincidence, but we have clearly seen that whichever regime went and announced that they're going to switch to euro or the African Union currency as a hypothesized currency to be used for energy trade, those regimes were toppled, be it Iraq, be it Libya, Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, and so on and so forth. So clearly, it appears that the US is very, very ferociously guarding the strength of the US dollar and wants to make sure that there is no competition to it. We do see that China believes that crypto is a way to upstage the US dollar, and therefore the Chinese government is very consciously and significantly investing in coming out with their own crypto. And in that context, if we see a third-party private sector crypto coming in, set up by a group of people or one entity or whoever, and it starts challenging the US dollar. For example, the Libra that was proposed by Facebook was clearly challenging the US dollar. It had to shut it down. Libra is nowhere now. And therefore, with that same extension of logic, the moment there is a large challenge to US dollar, these cryptos will be shut down. And in that case, Indians who are holding that money, that those cryptos, will be losing out. Also keep in mind that there's a large amount of foreign exchange moving out because people are buying those cryptos. And there is no productive asset getting created against those foreign exchange that's going out.
So we're basically insuring ourselves for the future.
We are ensuring
Um,
ourselves and we are ensuring those who do not understand crypto very well. There are a large set of young people who think that everybody else and Surya, you and me are dinosaurs, and we don't understand technology. And this is
yeah,
the big new thing. There were, as we had discussed last time, when the subprime crisis was happening,
yeah,
everybody said that's the next big new thing that
yeah,
people like you and I don't understand. Something which defies the laws of physics or the laws of economics cannot
yeah,
survive. It's not something that will survive. It's commonsensical. If you go against common sense, you will have the 2008 kind of a global depression happening.
no, yeah,
And therefore, if I just take the analogy from privacy, where people say you can, give your data based on the consent, but when you click on the click wrap agreement saying I agree to all of that, which has got 60 pages of a legal agreement, which even the top lawyers can't interpret, you're basically doing a uninformed consent, and that is
yeah,
frowned upon on the privacy world. Same way, when you're buying assets which you don't completely understand, it's an uninformed asset that you're buying. You might say,
yeah,
I'm an adult and I'm free in this country to buy whatever I want to buy, but do you really understand what you're buying? And when there will be trouble, you will be coming back and saying, well, the government did not help me.
yeah,
And
yeah,
there are people committing suicide because all their savings went away, because the cryptos went away. So those are challenges that a government such as an Indian government has to be very cognizant about, and therefore make sure that either there is a deep understanding of what people are investing into when they buy cryptos, or ensure that there is a signaling going out that the government does not like cryptos. And I think there has been a very strong signal in this budget that they are filling up the regulatory vacuum around crypto, but they don't really like cryptos.
yeah, yeah. Oh, interesting. So now the second point we are looking at clean technology. There's fair bit of reference there from the finance minister. What do you see? Where do you see this going?
I think this budget has been very interesting on multiple areas. One of them is not just digital technology, but all kinds of technology, and they're not siloed technology. Let me just take one example to explain what I'm talking about. Is this budget pushes for coal-fired plants to use biomass. Now, what does that mean? Is that there will be a huge market created for all the post-harvest stock which is currently being burned, and because of the burning, there is pollution being created. And so, when there is an economic incentive being provided through a market-driven economy, the farmers are going to sell their stock instead of burning it, and therefore the farmers are going to get richer, we are going to get less pollution, and the cost of power production is going to go down. So it's a win-win situation of using technology in a very, very appropriate manner. And it's not just digital technology, it's not just servers and IoT and Wi-Fi being put in. It is different kinds of technologies that are being put in, and we see that across the entire budget. It's a very cutting edge technology focused budget, and as a technologist and as a digital economist, I'm very happy that the government is responding very, very quickly, be it crypto, be it clean tech, be it solar manufacturing. And the second aspect of the technology part is, Surya, that there's a large focus on Atmanirbhar, right? And therefore, when we're talking about clean tech, it is not just clean tech to be imported and plugged in, but clean tech where there are clear incentives for local production of those components. For example, if you look at solar modules, there's a very clear focus on production of the polysilicate base to the solar modules, and there is a production linked incentive that is being brought out. There are also significant funding being provided. There's about 2,500 crore for solar panel production that is being provided and provisioned as part of the budget. We also see a huge focus on battery, and not just battery for EVs, but also battery swapping for EVs, and therefore the government is coming out with standards which are going to help these battery swapping to happen. And that's just one aspect of EV. But in terms of clean tech, the entire ecosystem of clean tech, right from using the stocks in the agricultural area, to batteries and all kinds of batteries, to recharging, to using electric trains, and rolling out 400 Gati Shaktis over the next 3 years. I think these are all part of a larger clean tech initiative, which is what this budget is representing. I think that's very, very positive on many counts, Surya.
Education, the stress on digital education. I think basically looking at the fact that the last 2 years has been terrible, especially for children in government schools.
Right, no, absolutely. I think we as a country have lost 2 years of our children's education, which is going to impact our human resource quality, especially at this age. I mean, at the age where it's very, very formative age.
Yeah.
And the government coming out with initiatives such as digital university, which should have been happening, to the skilling portal, to even having 400 new channels on Doordarshan, which is going to focus on education for children. I think that's the only way to cover our hinterland and provide education to those who don't have the fancy laptops and tablets
Yeah.
and so on, which we take it as granted in the cities. And therefore, Doordarshan and their channels becomes a very important part of providing that education. In fact, my question is that it should have probably happened earlier. Why didn't it happen earlier? But
Yeah.
good at least that it's happening now, and it's going to at least also ensure that there is quality of education. So even if the pandemic goes away and we go back to our regular education, we do know that many of the schools are single teacher schools. So what kind
Yeah.
of education is being imparted? Now, if that can be strengthened through the Doordarshan channels that our finance minister spoke about in the budget, I think that's going to go a long way into enhancing the quality of education. Now, along with it, there was also a very important announcement on upgradation of the Anganwadis. And I think
Hmm.
in many of the sectors, we see there's a focus on quality and not just a rollout of certain initiatives and tick marks. So again, if you look at railways, it's not about coming out with a bunch of new trains, but bunch of new Vande Bharat meals, which are high quality meals. Similarly, it's not just setting up more Anganwadis and letting the kids sprawl on the dirt ground, but upgrading those Anganwadis for a nation that is going to be a developed nation, and therefore the human resource and our children deserve to have a much better infrastructure from both preschool and school infrastructure, and hence the upgradation of the Anganwadis, the digital universities, the Doordarshan channels for education are all going in the same direction. In addition, I think there was a very important point on letting foreign universities come in,
Yeah.
both from
Yeah.
quality of education perspective as well as from the perspective that we're draining huge amount of foreign exchange, sending our kids over to US,
Absolutely.
UK, and so on. So, as part of the gift city, they're allowing these universities to set up shop in India, and not being bogged down by the Indian regulations, things like reservation and so on and so forth, and which will ensure that we also end up having a large number of educators who will be linked to these universities. So it'll start creating a much larger, it'll become a catalyst for a much larger education industry in this country. I mean, look at Australia. A very significant portion of their GDP is education and export
Yeah.
of education through students who come in. Why can't India do it? We have a fantastic education system from a higher education perspective. Why can't we expand it? And by getting these universities into India, we make sure that our children don't need to go outside, and therefore our children can get a cheaper education here while developing the education ecosystem within this country. And I think that's a very, very positive step that has been taken.
Well, let's hope the foreign universities bite, because
I hope
I
so. No,
presume
I,
they
I
have.
I surely think they will, because it's a huge market here, and it's
Yeah.
not just the Indian market. There is Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, entire Southeast Asia. So if the universities set up shop here, it's easily a 2 billion people market that they're looking at. And if you look at just our students, we have got over 200 million students in this country. That's
Yeah.
bigger than the population of Pakistan. Just our students is bigger than the population of Pakistan. So,
Yeah.
it is clearly a very large market, and we have the paying capability now.
Let's hope that works out. I'd like to come to the 5G spectrum auction that the finance minister announced. We are still a little late, isn't it? We are still behind on 5G.
Not really, because the day the auction happens, the infrastructure providers, the telecom companies are pretty much ready with the infrastructure to roll it out. I think a year delay here and there is kind of okay. there were certain issues that had to be sorted out. There were issues in terms of spectrum. There are still, continues to be issues in terms of de-licensed spectrum. I did not hear about
Yeah.
de-licensing of 5G spectrum in the budget today. And that is important if you are looking at using 5G technology for logistics, for indoor usage. You can't be going to a telecom provider to use 5G inside your room or inside your house or inside your building. And what about enterprises who just want to use 5G internally and connect their data centers for that matter? So there is a lot that needs to be done, and so a year going into deliberation is not necessarily bad. Also, that year I think has got invested into building domestic capabilities. So if you had gone ahead and put 5G a year earlier, we would have had larger foreign players coming in, and that would have kind of had the first mover advantage for these foreign players, and it gets very difficult for a new player to then get into the industry. With this year of delay, we will have more domestic players being part of the 5G rollout. So I think that's a positive development. It will also contribute to the revenue generation that the government would badly need to fund this budget. And I hope they are on the timelines in terms of getting the 5G sold out. In fact, in addition, I hope the LIC IPO also really goes
Yeah.
forward and does well, because otherwise there is a huge funding gap that the government will be facing. But coming back to your focus on technology per se, I think it's positive that we had a little delay in rolling out 5G, and I hope it does get rolled out this year, because beyond that, then it'll really be a delay, Surya.
Finally, since we are talking about 5G, BharatNet appears to be getting a major push. BharatNet has been actually pretty much behind.
No, absolutely. BharatNet has been behind, and it's surprising that we're still talking about it. It should have been done and dusted. If you remember the 2018 digital connectivity plan of the government, we were supposed to have 1 Gbps connectivity to every village by 2020
Yeah.
and 10 Gbps connectivity by 2022. I don't think we're having any of that. So it's high time that we actually rolled out what was envisioned as part of the national digital connectivity plan. And it's also important to note that there was a focus on affordable broadband in remote areas, with 5% of the USO being allocated for the affordable broadband in remote areas. Because clearly you see life gets completely disrupted if digital is not there, which has been the learning for the last 2 years. And therefore it is critical, even from aspects of ease of living, which is what the finance minister focused on right in the beginning. It's important that there is the Bharat broadband rollout happening very, very quickly and within this year. And in addition, I hope that sometime in the future, we also get the satellite-based broadband connectivity being rolled out.
So, last question. I mean, when you look at this budget, what's your broad sense? I mean, how do you see it?
I think the budget, very thankfully, focuses on business as usual. It does not come out with anything which would raise people's alarms. There is no, increase in taxes. Obviously, there is no reduction in taxes either for the
Yeah.
for the direct taxes and so on. But if there is a sanitization, and if there is a continuity of all the policies, it is much helpful for the industry. So we can work around all the issues that bother us, and we reach another level of stability. And this budget seems to be promoting stability, and we really appreciate that. The other part of the budget that we see is that it's really future focused. It's talking about new technologies. It's talking about how to get technology into defense, into education, into agriculture, into healthcare. In every area, it's trying to push for a technology focusing on genomics, green energy, artificial intelligence. It really is a future technology focused budget. The second big focus seems to be Atmanirbhar. So everything that we're talking about that needs to be developed for the country, there is a focus that it should be developed within the country. If you look at the statement on defense, where 68% of the procurement is now earmarked for the domestic industry, which is
Yeah.
huge. And then there are new mechanisms being created so that the private sector can now participate in R&D along with DRDO. So these new SPV models are, I think, very, very positive, and I think that's the sense that I get from the budget. It is technology focused and it's Atmanirbhar focused.
So looking forward, hope the implementation goes ahead, and hopefully there won't be any shortfalls in money. Jaijit Bhattacharya, thank you again. Thank you very much for that perspective, and I'm sure this conversation will have to be renewed at some other future point. Thanks very much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And for all of you who have joined us on this conversation, keep coming to us with your comments and observations and questions. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, and so on. Thank you very much. Good night.